Single Tracks, Utah. We're going to be mounting the radiator fan and the radiator guards on my new 2020 KTM 300 XC. So we're going to start with removing the plastics, the tank, and the seat to be able to access the radiator. I'm going to assume that you know how to do that, and then I'll take it from that point and show you how to drain the radiator fluid and to mount the radiator fan to the bike. The radiator will be mounted on the right side of the bike, and it'll sit just above here. And it'll give us good access to be able to see the digital readout that comes with the fan, which you can see here. So right now my garage is 57 degrees. And we'll be able to program the Trailtech fan to kick on, and I've got it pre-programmed to turn on at 185 degrees is where I like to see the fan kick on, so it's not turning on too frequently. But I'm gonna get the bike taken apart and get to the point where we'll drain the radiator fluid, and I'll show you how that goes from there. All right, now we've removed the tank and the seat, so we have access to the radiator. So I'm going to finish removing the radiator guards by removing the bolts that mount it to the frame before I remove the radiator. But right now I'm going to drain the radiator fluid. Now I've got a clean milk jug that I've cleaned out, so I can reuse this radiator fluid because it's brand new. But right here there's a 8mm bolt that you can loosen to drain your radiator fluid. So I'm going to loosen that and catch it in the milk jug. I'm going to set the camera down to do this and pick it up from there. Okay, so now I'm going to loosen this 8mm bolt. Slowly crack that loose. You'll see the fluid start to come out. And this bolt has a copper washer on it, so you're going to want to make sure not to lose that as you pull it. So now that there's vacuum, I'm going to reach up on the radiator cap and slowly loosen the cap, and it'll begin to drain. I'm just controlling the spray by the pressure I'm keeping on the cap so it doesn't go all over the place. Okay, so now the fluid is drained. I'm going to go ahead and replace that bolt and lightly tighten it. These only need to be snug tight, and that's good enough. I'm going to set the radiator fluid to the side, and I'll begin taking the radiator off. Head screwdriver, I'm going to loosen up the hose clamps. There's one that's on the bottom of the radiator, and also one that's at the top that we'll need to remove. My 6mm T-handle, a little bit better access to it. Go ahead and loosen that up. Okay. There's also another one that faces this direction. Loosen there as well. And then the last one is here on the top. Move that further out of my way for a second. Okay, so now all the hose clamps are loose. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the bolts with my 8mm that are holding this to the frame. There's one. And two. Go ahead and remove that old radiator guard. So now, I'm going to carefully pull the radiator loose from the bike frame. And they are on there pretty good. So there you go, release that. I'm going to pull off the drain valve. You got the lower pipe and the pipe that feeds the other radiator. And there we go, there's the radiator removed. Okay, so now I've got the fan, and I went ahead and mounted it to the radiator. There's just the 2 bolts on each side. And they're very small screws that thread into the side of the radiator. Now we can take the radiator back to the bike and remount the hoses, and then we'll go through how to run the wiring. But right now, I'm going to show you how to install the thermostat probe. So the probe is going to be mounted. It goes through one of the fins here, and I'll be using a thermal paste that I bought. It's a Tusk Digital Radiator Fan Replacement Thermal Paste that I'll put on the end of this before I install it. So now I'm going to put some thermal paste on each side of the temperature probe. I'm going to mount it in the center, and you insert that in between the fins and gently press it in. Take the end of my screwdriver to help me, because that's okay. And that is the thermal probe installed. So now I'm going to reinstall the hoses onto the radiator. Make sure they get seated on there well. And then line the top. And clip the top hose in. Then I'll take my 6mm wrench and I'll retighten each of the hose clamps, and then we'll route the cable. Radiator fluid that we saved. Slowly get it poured in, and you'll hear it bubble as you go, so you want to make sure you get all the air bubbles out so that you know that it's full. Also got some out of the overflow. And make sure just to securely tighten your radiator cap. And your radiator is full. So now we're going to route the cable from the fan back to the battery. And I'm going to route the wire underneath the frame and then bring it down the left side of the bike and work it in between the frame you gotta work the wires through. And carefully bring it up through there. This little fuse box is a little large, so it kind of wants to catch. All right, so now we've got that threaded through. We'll bring this back to the battery for the final connection. But now I'm going to secure that wire with these frame straps that come with the bike. This one there, and then there's this one that comes under and wraps around the whole main wire harness for the bike. And that'll keep the wire securely out of the way. Like that. I'm gonna wire up the wiring harness to the battery. So start by removing the negative terminal. Make sure that you don't get shocked. And I'm going to hold this out of the way for a moment. And then I'll undo the positive side. And I like to put this connector underneath the main connector. So you can see how it's angled. I'm gonna put the angled side up. And then reinstall the screw. We'll do the same with the negative side. You got to line it up with the battery block. So that will thread in and tighten it down. Now I'm going to take these wires and I'm going to zip tie them out of the way so they're together and keep them secured. All right, guys, well, that concludes the installation of the Trailtech Radiator Fan Kit on the KTM 300XC bike build we've been doing. I hope you guys have liked the video so far. If you have, please subscribe down below. Thanks, guys.